However, they're more expensive and they're easy to damage. So a good beginner's sharpening stone is just a crash and bash oil stone, but not all oil stones are created equal. So your standard crappy tool shop oil stone, like a Stanley or a Draper, tend to be really coarse and nasty. So the best of the best is the Norton India oil stone, the guys that used to make the Norton motorbikes. So if you can find an India oil stone, it's the best. I personally quite like to go around old antique shops, thrift stores, car boots, and hoover up, you know, dead granddad's oil stones, because they've ground all the roughness off them and taken the pain. Someone else has done it for you. Exactly the same with diamond stones you'll frequently encounter. They're coarse diamond waste from the diamond industry. They're usually seated into a plastic paddle. Again, they're ferocious. They just destroy knives at a rate of knots because the diamond cuts so hard. So a second-hand diamond stone is good for someone else who's taken that real rough edge off it. If it's a water stone, obviously the lubricant is water. If it's an oil stone, the lubricant is oil. A water stone can become an oil stone, but it will remain an oil stone because you'll never get it out again. Benefits of oil stones over water stones: oil stones won't crack in the cold, so you can take them into the zeros and they're not going to freeze. Whereas a water stone, you will end up with lots of little water stones, which you're not used to. However, benefit of a water stone over an oil stone: you've always got spit in your mouth, so you don't always have oil with you, so you always have facility to sharpen. So plenty of lube, don't be shy. Place the blade blank flat on the stone, tilt it over the shoulder so the cutting edge is now flush. Keep your finger on the shoulder, that's the line where the blank bevels off, not on the bevel itself, otherwise you'll end up with red streaks. So that's your mark. Push quite hard and you'll build up a tidal wave. Can you see the oil being pushed? And maintain that tidal wave so you can chase it round the corner so that you know that you've got full contact. Because of the curvature of the edge, if I was just to push flat, you can see the oil wave disappears as it runs under the curve. So you want to maintain that curve. So essentially, you imagine you're snicking off this corner. The knife repeatedly traces this pattern as you subtly lift the handle to keep the bevel flat on the curvature. It's a bit like trying to teach someone to hit a tennis ball or a cricket ball with a bat. It's something that has to be lived through. You know, you can watch it, but you have to do it. So it's just the repetition. It's a subtle lift of the hand here, but if you use loads of oil, you've got a visual reference. The harder you push down flat, the more steel you will remove, the faster you will sharpen your knife up. But if you're new to it, it's also the faster you'll wreck your knife as well, because you can potentially roll too far forward and put a second bevel on, which is essentially rounding off the knife edge. Or you can lean too far back and your shoulder starts to creep back further and further and your edge gets finer and more friable. So in an ideal world, there is no magic number of strokes. It very much depends on how much you need to sharpen your knife. If you've been carving a hardwood, you might need to give it more attention. You might just be working on a project and think, you know what, I'm just going to give this a tickle because it's not quite biting and doing what it's told. And it might only require 5 or 6 strokes and you're back in business. So ideally, I'd be ambidextrous and I can just swap hands and go this way, but that doesn't feel right, so I'm going to have to now come towards me with my dominant hand. So for strokes towards, exactly the same. Blank goes flat, thumb this time goes on the shoulder, cant onto the cutting edge, drag forward and repeat, snicking off that corner, pushing the tidal wave of oil and lifting the wrist to chase the curvature. So I'm going to put in a sequence of maybe 10 or 12. With experience, you can pick up any knife and feel the edge, and you will feel what side of the stone that person finished sharpening on. Because what's happening is I'm pushing my knife, so I'm cutting the stone, which is reducing the steel on the bottom edge next to the stone, and it creates this little kind of electrum wire edge that just lifts this burr that you can feel on your thumb pads. And then I come back the other way and reduce it this way, So now to reduce it even more, I'm going to do alternate strokes so I can creep it back even further. So that is one away and then one towards. With experience and your own knife, you won't have to go flat, tilt, push. You'll just be able to drop straight onto the flat and go for it. But if you're a beginner, I'd recommend that you always seat it and make sure it's good. So this is just a medium stone, a coarse stone. Or sorry, that's coarse on that side, grey, red is medium. And then to finish, I'm going to go to a finer stone. And this is actually a natural stone. It's called an Arkansas stone, spelled Arkansas. You will lose all credibility if you walk into a shop and ask for an Arkansas stone. Usually the trade name is Smiths, is a family in America from Arkansas who bought up all this land with this natural sedimentary rock, and they've been selling, that's the family industry, they sell them worldwide. And it gives a superior edge. You can get artificial oil stones that try and replicate this. You can hear the difference here, how smooth it is. There's no rasp to that. So this is a finishing stone. Arkansas make really nice little field stones. You get a little cut down version. It's a great pocket stone. The Japanese water stones and the diamond stones come in grits, a little bit like sandpaper. The origin of the grit, especially with the water stones, so you'd have like a 12,000 grit, for example, which is super smooth, but the number comes from the number of silk threads per square inch used in the sieving process of the particulate before they bond it. So if it's almost like flour and then it gets bonded, you got a super high grit number, and that's where the sandpaper industry has stolen that grading system from. And then to finish, alternating. That was 10 away, 10 towards. And we'll go for the region of 6 or 8 away and 6 or 8 towards. The cautions with using oil stones and water stones is you start to build up this grey slurry, which is bits of your knife. You know, it's the steel you're grinding away. You can use this as a grinding paste, so if your knife has picked up a tarnish, some tree barks and something simple as a tomato that's really acidic will actually start to tarnish the blade, then you can just polish it off with a finger pad. Do not stick your finger in your eye. I've had to take one person to A&E who did that. It was a bit dumb. So rubbing finely ground steel directly into your eyeball generally doesn't end very well. But they hadn't thought that far ahead. It was a midgie.
If you're using the field stone, the smaller one, do you still place it on a rock, or do you hold it in one hand and do it that way?
You have two options. Depends on the damage your knife is sustained or how sharp you want to get it. In the field, if I want to do a super nice job, I'll actually carve little wooden pegs and I'll seat the stone and just tap it and anchor it in place, and then I've got a perfect surface. But generally, I'll just use this and just give it a little touch up. My personal sharpening kit is just a wooden board with some wet and dry, 6,000 grit glued to it, and another little board with a bit of leather belt glued to it, and that's just gives me an edge whenever I need it. So now the secret to getting a scary sharp knife. So it's now sharp, but because it's come off the stone, we've still got that burr, which we want to reduce. And you can reduce by stropping. You can just take off your leather belt and use the reverse side, like the non-grain side. But in a camp situation, just a bit of old belt glued to a board. And it's all to do with the way you strop. So you cut on the stone and you drag on the leather, otherwise you end up with two strops, especially if it's your own belt. And I'm sure you've seen people doing this. Barbers will do it for cut-foot razors. They're not actually doing this, so this is how most people screw up and kill their edge, because they roll over it. If you actually see a professional barber, they roll over the spine of the knife and return, and roll over the spine of the knife and return. So they never roll the edge. So the secret to a scary sharp knife is this lift, clean off, never roll at all. You can just focus on one area if you want and work your way through the curvature. Personally, I prefer a sweep. I think it sets the edge slightly better. And you can push quite hard on this. We usually charge this with some aluminium oxide paste, like Autosol or Metal Glow, some grinding paste. And it just cuts that little bit better and sharper. And then alternate strokes to finish. And that's sharp. A sharp knife shouldn't feel sharp. That's the secret. Generally, if a knife is sharp and you cut yourself with it, you don't even know you've cut yourself. It's usually a drip, drip, drip sound is the first indication that you've actually cut yourself. So there's a number of tests. You can go for a Woodsman's alopecia, try shaving. Last time I did this with a very sharp knife, I ended up cutting myself. But should be able to just lift hairs off like that. Or another neat trick is on your thumb. Don't press, but a sharp knife should just bite that cuticle and not slide. If the knife is in any way dull, with the weight of the blade, I'll force it. It'll want to slide off the nail. Whereas a super sharp knife, you literally touch it and it just goes straight in and just bites. Obviously don't press. Or a sheet of paper. A sharp knife should be able to just go straight through a sheet of paper.